I think I always drew cartoons. I think that's my kind of love. In uni, I remember my style changed like a million times. There's always a time constraint. It's every time I notice something or I see something or I think of something that I think would be a great or funny story or something like that, it would be written on my notes app.
Okay.
And then when I have the time, I draw it out. A lot of people put freelancing is like people who don't work sometimes say they're freelancing, but they're not actually freelancing. So it's gotten a bad rep in a way.
Also known as a happiness illustrator, she creates beautiful snippets of happy incidents, funny conversations, and daily life musings that she draws. She's been drawing professionally for over a decade and has hundreds of products manufactured from those drawings. Her drawings are full of life. They pick up on the small joys we all know but often don't really notice. She is the artist behind some of India's most loved planners, and by her own admission, a stickler for timelines and planning. A prolific illustrator and a bringer of so many smiles through her art and merchandise. Join me to explore how Alicia Souza sees the world.
Alicia, hi, and welcome to the Iconic Women podcast.
Thank you so much. I love being here. Thank you.
I'm actually super curious and super inquisitive about your life because I see your art and now the artist is here and there are so many questions that I want to ask you.
Sure. Excited. Go.
Tell me, growing up, were you that kid that would, sit in the back, like the typical backbencher who was looking at everybody and drawing and, observing things and kind of like sniggering?
Absolutely not, sadly. I was such a nerd. Okay, not such a nerd. I was a relatively good student. Always in the front, like to the point where, this is quite embarrassing. I used to say I can't see. I wear glasses even then. But actually, I just didn't want to be disturbed. Like, I don't know, everyone like calling me in class. It's just so much trouble, so I just sit in the front. But so I was a bit nerdy. I always drew. But I was definitely not the best drawer in class. But it's just that now when I recollect, I'm like, I just continued drawing. When you're a kid, everyone draws. Then everyone stops drawing. Mm-hmm. I didn't stop drawing, I just continued drawing. But I think I was the only one who just stuck at it. So it was not my interest, not one of my solo interests where they're like 100% she's getting into art. That definitely was not the case.
You were not one of those?
No, definitely not. And it was not even a consideration because, so I was born and brought up in Abu Dhabi. So there were no artists. There's just no artists. Like I never met one. I did not even understand what that field meant. Also, then there was no internet. I mean, when I was very young, there was no internet.
Yeah.
So it was not something you could research and figure out what it meant. But when I'm talking when you're younger. So when you're older, you start researching. And even then, it's not like illustrator is a job. It's just advertising and stuff like that, which is ultimately graphic design is what I got into because of that.
Right. So what was your childhood like?
A mix of everything, I think. Like, it was great. I have nice parents. One of the things I always think back and I'm very, very heartily grateful for is the fact that they let us do what we wanted, especially because something like my dad and my mom, who, when I said I was thinking about design, they were absolutely okay with it. Honestly, even me now, I'd be a bit nervous if my son says, I want to get into design, even though I know the field completely because I know what goes into it.
But why? Why do you say that?
Why do I say
that you would be nervous if your son said he wants to study?
I think I still completely understand the nuances of all your STEM fields, but I feel like I got not lucky, but I know what goes into doing something in the arts. I'm not nervous about him getting into it, but I just know what he has to put into it if he has to make this work.
Right.
So that's the only thing I think. And my parents were just like, yeah, do what you love. And I was like, oh, just tell me to get into medical. That would be easy. But yeah, no.
So here they put the choice back on you.
They put the choice on me, which made it I had to make it work. There was no going around it. And especially because, so I left home at 17 and got into uni and stuff. And then after it was just from then till now, it's just been making it, you have to make it work. Mm-hmm. There's no like, oh, I can default to something else. It just wasn't an option.
Of course, yeah. So at what point did you realize that, yes, art is it? Art/illustration.
Yeah.
And we'll come to that a little further down into the chat. But at what point did you realize that, yes, this is what I'm going to do and I'm going to be great at it?
Okay. So I feel like there are two different lines. So one is getting into design, which honestly I got into only because I was told, like, so there was an art teacher of the school. We didn't have art as a subject when you're older. And this is a story I always tell. Because like I remember it's like as being one of those points where she was like, listen, if you don't take art, you're going to kind of ruin your life. Not because I was good, but because I was so interested. Like, I remember the school magazine came up and I went running to do the cover. I was so interested, and she saw that. And so that was a big moment where I was like, okay. And the second was my parents saying, you should do it. And then researching the thing. So that was, and for me, it was very scary doing that because I was one of the kids who was like, I'm really good at math. I should just be an accountant. It makes sense. It's linear.
Yeah.
And also, like, I think being from the Middle East, it was always like 9-to-5 job, pay your bills. This does not. I don't know. I don't know if there's like a job after this. I don't know anyone who's doing it. So that became like daunting. But I'm so glad. I mean, I had the joy of being young, where I was like, I can't take that risk.
Yeah.
I mean, there was no risk, actually. It was like, I had to make it work. It's as basic as that.
There was no plan B.
There wasn't. Not for it not working out. Unless there was a point where I did consider, which was much later when I took communication design in uni, and that's pretty much graphic design. And when I finished uni, I always had like a part-time job. And after I finished uni, sorry, I'm getting straight into how I got into illustration.
No, just go for it.
Okay,
yeah.
So in my final year of uni, I love drawing, okay? And I realized all my work is illustration-based, all my projects. And the project that I wasn't illustration-based, I didn't care about in too many. I mean, if I have to use bad words, I literally didn't give two shits. So in uni, you'd have like typography. Not really keen. Okay. But I mean, I love the subject to read about.
Yeah.
I don't want to work on it. Like I was very certain by the end that I wanted to get into illustration. So, and when at the end, I got this not merit card. It was like an award for like illustration.
Yeah.
And I always got complimented. And so I was like, fine. And as soon as I finished uni, we had portfolio review day, and I got my first job from a random editor of the newspaper.
Yeah.
And she was like, I want you to do an illustration. I was like, okay, this is for me. And then as soon as I got into the job market, I realized that illustration is only contract jobs or freelance jobs unless you're joining something like a newspaper or publishing house. Publishing house too, it involved graphic design. And I was certain, and it was always a very small portion of it. And I was certain I was going to do only illustration. I did not want to do graphic design. So I had to be a freelance illustrator, but that meant I had to get a job on the side, and I worked in the bank for a while. I worked in a coffee shop, and then I worked in the bank.
Okay.
And the bank was so good. I loved the bank that at one point I actually considered that I would stay on, like in the bank, and I'd be like, a financial planner, up my alley. Found it easy. It was it worked with my sort of like my capabilities. I could see which direction I would move in a bank. But then that of course changed because now this part I'm condensing is that I moved to India because I started a company, and for that I moved here because we were manufacturing and stuff like that. And and that's where like the decision changed, and I'm like, okay, now this has to work. Back to illustration.
Back to illustration.
Yeah.
How did your drawing style evolve or change when you went from school and your school years in Abu Dhabi to college in Melbourne?
I think I always drew cartoons. That's my kind of love. I never was interested in drawing charcoals and doing like realistic. I never was keen on that. In uni, I remember my style changed like a million times. And it wasn't until I started working as an illustrator full time that my style stuck to what it kind of is evolved from now. Because I had just had so much on my plate. So you just stick to the fastest style, which I can churn out work. So it was more, it's the outcome of like a lot of work.
So you pick up these really sweet little everyday incidents from life, right? So I remember you said something about how you love to eavesdrop.
I do. It's terrible.
And then there was one post about how when there's a mosquito that bites you, you kind of very vengefully try to look for that mosquito. So like really everyday things like this, So what are those things that are going on in your mind when you say, yes, this little incident in my life happened and I'm going to put it down into like a carousel of 7 drawings or 5 drawings or whatever.
Right.
What is that process?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so every time something happens, I make a note on my phone. Before it used to be a notebook that's in my bag at all times. Now it's not upgraded. It's moved with the times, and now it's on my phone.
Okay.
And it's actually the notes app. So where I write, like it's always words. Even before, my notebook would be words, and everyone would be like, "Oh, it's full of drawings," but it's like all words. So it'll be because that's the quickest way to write down. It's quickest way to take down a whole story into something I can refer to later.
Yeah.
Because there's always a time constraint. It's every time I notice something or I see something or I think of something that I think would be a great or funny story or something like that, it would be written on my notes app.
Okay.
And then when I have the time, I draw it out.
Wow.
And that is literally what I was doing before.
I saw that,
so
when I kind of just peeked
that's
into
on
your
my
room
phone and my iPad at the same time.
So what was your drawing about? Was it anything to do with this podcast?
No, these are like old notes. Old notes. Like, so
okay.
whenever something happens, it's never like what I'm doing. It's always something that I've noticed. It's not like today, I mean, that also can be a thing, but that would be more like an entry for, now I also think of output, because before, or when Instagram started or when Facebook started, so when I just go on social media, and I'm talking about sharing, it was always it was a single panel. It was panel-based drawing. So everything was, how do you fit all those thoughts into one panel?
Right.
But now it's a carousel, so you can tell a story. So that kind of works for me. So then you write a little bit more. It becomes more of a story. Not always, you can also put single ones. But it's also adapted to video, which I've not gotten to that part yet. But for me, my favorite is the carousel, because I like words and I like picture, and I think what I have to say usually goes over just a single post, but not always.
Right.
So
Yeah. I do see a little bit of video though, not a lot, but where you take a little piece of paper and you transform it and you do something on it, like a shark or something simple, and you put it on the fridge, and someone who sees that can, I think it's like a mini, tutorial. Yeah, exactly. So do you plan to do more of those?
So see, I think some things are, my favorite thing to do is tell stories. And I cannot do that on a reel if it's with the drawings that I have, because mine are more static. So that doesn't work with reels as well. So instead, what I can offer is, if I have to do a reel, is that I'll show someone how to do something. Mm-hmm. And so that's like a different output altogether. But honestly, my favorite thing to do is like just tell the stories. Yeah. But the fact that people really like these tutorials makes me happy, and so I can do that as well. Yeah. But it's just like, but those take time. That's the only hiccup. So that's like, I mean, it takes as much time, honestly, as maybe it's just preference.
So, for someone who always thought that she would be in a 9-to-5 job, like you told me last time, not only are you not in a 9-to-5 job, but you get to kind of design your day and your life the way you want, and you have this exciting career as an amazing illustrator. So what changed? How did that happen?
Okay. So when I think of me as a child and I think of what I do now, I think then if I had explained it to myself in words, it would have been traumatizing, because that's like the last thing I wanted. I wanted structure of just 9 to 5, do it. It's very understandable. I remember I used to look at, I'm going away from it, but I remember I used to look at like Garfield and thinking how hard it must be for a cartoonist to draw one drawing every day. What happens if you don't come up with a drawing idea? Yeah. And now, not only do you have to draw ideas per day, but you also have to work on multiple things. So that would have been like really scary. But I think it's, of course, it's not like I go from there and now I'm here. It's such a long trajectory from, say, getting out of college and then, understanding how you, firstly, very importantly, is how am I going to make money? How am I going to pay the bills? And from there, understanding what I love doing and what is going to be feasible. And it's all decision that led me to the path that I am on now. And that not only works for me logically in terms of say financially, but also works in terms of what I absolutely love doing, what I can do in the long run, what is going to grow my career, and what I can do in the future, and what that means. All those things. So it's just, it's just decisions that led it to this path. Like this, like I don't even know where to start because at each point it's been different. So when I got out of uni, I was freelancing, but I also worked part-time to pay the bills, of course. And then after that, when I moved to India, it was working on the company. When when we split ways, then I was working as a freelancer, and what that meant, and really quickly needing to, of course, make money. And then after that, starting the online store, but what that meant while also working as a freelancer, because I didn't want to give that up because that's stable income. Yeah. And then all the way from that to now, that's just decisions based on all those things.
Yeah. So walk us through that. So when you came back to India and you started to freelance as an illustrator, at some point you also kind of formed a company, right? And you have a partner, and your partner kind of looks after the marketing and the merchandise and that end of things, if I'm not wrong. So can you walk us through all of that? Because it's very structured now, isn't it?
Now it's a bit structured, a bit. So when I moved to India, I was NRI on another level. I did not know, I don't know anything. I feel like I still am, because I'm a little more closeted. I don't really know as much. But when I came here, I just immediately worked in the company. When we split ways was when I started freelancing. But that was the scariest thing, because I know people in my field, which I didn't. I didn't know anyone in general, because I knew my brother who was here then, and he was one of the handful. I mean, literally maybe 10 people I knew in town, which was extremely scary, because now I had to pay bills immediately. Luckily, I got my first client immediately. Also, it just happened to be at the same time, and from there I started freelancing. I think a year and a half later was when I started making merchandise. Yeah, and maybe 2 years after, so altogether 2 years into freelancing is when I met my partner Saurabh. When I met my partner Saurabh, it was also coincidental that freelancing was going so well that I couldn't handle my online. I had to make a choice, because it was just me. I didn't want to hire anyone, because that means managing. And that meant also that I was considering closing down the merchandise section of my company. Met my partner. He's like, listen, we literally met. It was such a random way of how we met. Won't get into that. But we met, and we decided he would give it a run of seeing how to run this part of just the merchandise part. Yeah. And I'll still get a freelance, which was very important for me. And from there, we've literally just done that. So he handles the manufacturing, he handles the online store logistics, everything that deals with the merchandise part of my business. And I still freelance. So that's how I work. So it's kind of like having two jobs.
You still call it freelancing?
I do call it freelancing, because I don't know what to say, contract, illustration. You know what, I think the problem is a lot of people put freelancing is people who don't work sometimes say they're freelancing, but they're not actually freelancing. So it's gotten a bad rep in a way, but I kind of like that word, because that's literally what, I mean, I don't know why. I've never found that word.
Works for you.
Yeah, technically it's contract illustration. It's contract work. And I love it. I love it so much. It's the opposite of what many artists complain about. It just works with me, because I love working with different people. I love briefs. It has, it gives you a direction of how to go. I love that. Yeah, I love that there's a timeline. I'm extremely good with timelines. So there's an end, there's an end date, there's a delivery. They're both happy at the end of it. Amazing. And it's good dough, so it works.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Your art is, and I'm calling it art.
Yeah. I mean.
So your art it's very lighthearted. It's very joyous. It's very humorous. It's like these little fun moments in life, right? What are you like as a person?
I definitely have. I mean, I definitely have very blessed with just generally being mostly in a good mood. So to be honest, I just generally am happy-go-lucky in a way. So it's easy to draw about those things as well. But it's not that obviously things don't go wrong and stuff, but it's just not things I feel like drawing about, or maybe I'm just used to not drawing about it. So that's why ultimately what comes out is that. But I definitely put it down to, and now I can say it because I've also read a lot about it. It's just, I feel like just generally born a bit happier. So it just works in my favor that the drawings end up being a bit more. Yeah.
Yeah. Touch wood.
Yeah, touch wood. Also, I mean, also you make decision based. Like, so a lot of, I mean, it it doesn't walk a lonely line, right? It's also things like I was very particular even with, especially with work, that I would not do something that I don't like doing. And when I say I don't like doing accounts, but of course I do my accounts. Like it's not frivolous like that, but it's like, what would change my life in a way that's not so much better, but will, I'll give you an example. When we were making decisions about the company, one of the big decisions was that I was going to work from home, because changing that would mean a significant part of my day is not only meant to travel, but means that a lot of time gets wasted in me not doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
So these big decisions, I feel like seem very small, but are very important in your overall happiness. This is like another topic altogether. But these I take very seriously.
Yeah.
Me being able to prioritize things beyond just work is a big decision that I make in life. And that also is a sacrifice with, say, being able to take on certain things sometimes. But it's very, very big decision. I don't take calls after a certain time.
Okay.
All those things are they're pretty hard to hold on to. But the minute you do it for a substantially long amount of time, you realize how much more it adds to your general niceness of your life. Right. And I feel like people don't pay attention to those parts as much as they should. And I'm very particular about that as well.
So would you say that you're holding on to what makes you comfortable in terms of putting your best work out, or, sort of like your best output?
I think of it as life, honestly, because I think for me, work is integrated with life because I work from home. Not only that, but like everything about life affects my work, and vice versa. Honestly, it's not independent. Sorry, something's in my eye. It's not independent of each other. So I'm not holding on to as much as I'm thinking about decision based on these factors. And honestly, that it's not only for work, but it's for everything else.
Yeah.
So when someone asks like any question on either work or life, I consider like how it's going to affect my future life and how it's going to affect my present life.
Really?
And stuff like that.
Can you walk me through an example?
Like I just mentioned, like something like working from home, and that's like just a small example, but that's a big factor in how it affects my daily life.
So and you're happy to say no to things which kind of don't then kind of fall into this. So because you are particular about your time and you're quite guarded about that, you're happy to let a few other things go.
I wish I would say I'm actually the worst at saying no. So making these strong rules help. So if I say I'm not taking calls after 6, that means it goes for everybody. So it's not like I'm saying no to someone. It's just the rule. It's easier doing that than saying I will take your call at 6 or I'll take your call at 7. Because there's like a rule form. And it's really important for me because I think, and that's why I find it hard to say, when you said art, I find it hard to say my work is art and I'm an artist, because I feel like I'm not generally, at least the artists I meet are more, how do I put it? Free? I don't know. But I feel like that's why even when I started, I'm like, I understand STEM, because I feel like that's also kind of where my general personality, even growing up, was more that inclined. And I'm so disciplined, and it's the opposite of, I mean, not the opposite of free, but everything is so structured. Nothing is like left to chance, so it sounds more unartisty. That's the only thing. I think of my drawings as illustrations as opposed to, because I mostly do commercial illustration, mostly, if not entirely, do commercial illustration. So that kind of, I find that, not that it's not art, but I don't know. I just, this is like a debate I keep having with, not debate, but like a conversation I have with myself and conversation I have with other people sometimes, because it's very interesting to hear what people consider art. and everyone considers illustrations art.
Yeah.
And I consider other people's illustrations art.
But not your own.
Weird. I don't know.
So everything that you share on social media, even in print, like I have your diary, and
Thank you.
it all looks so effortless. But I feel like there is someone really working diligently and working hard behind all of this. Maybe the art, or sorry, the illustrations do come to you effortlessly. But what is that hard work? What is that legwork that you have to do, to make what you make?
Wow. Okay. I definitely can say I work hard. As in, I work. When I say all the time in work hours, I do not at all. Faff is the only word. I do not play around. It's the best field. But to make it work, at least the way I'm making it work for me, I think it works in multiple ways, right? But for me, I work really hard because, like I said, it's 2 jobs now. I have to work for the company to manufacture merchandise, because that involves not only me getting financial returns, because that's the output, but also now, because it's a company on its own, so many people depend on it. There's like people who work in every, along the way, so it's a chain. So suddenly you're responsible for other people as well.
Right.
But I also work with companies, and that is also that's my bread and butter. So that's something I can't take for, I can't be unavailable for 3 months, because I'm like, they're gonna forget. So I have to work all the time and make sure there's no backlog whatsoever at all times. So yeah, there's a lot of, so there's literally no there is again, I'm going to use the word sacrifice, because it's all work. I don't get time now specifically. So specifically after having a child, so in the evenings, I used to not do client work. I used to just do my work. When I say my work, I'd be like, I get to paint for fun, or I'll try a new medium, which I've not tried before. There's none of that now, which is the only sad part, I think, of work life now. But it's fine, because I get other experiences, which is like my child, of course.
So have you ever tried to convey other shades of emotion? So there is the spectrum of happy and light and just kind of joyful.
Yeah.
Have you tried to convey other stuff and put that out there as well?
Okay, so it's always, because it's based on life and based on me.
Yeah.
And at least the story I tell online is based on that. So I tend to draw, there are multiple times I draw about things that are a bit sadder, so like losing a pet. But ultimately it comes to I want people to walk away, and at least that's how I also think of talk. Even if you're losing something, I want people to walk away feeling better. Not oh, that's just sad, How I love my movies, by the way. I love it, it's the opposite.
You like the sad movies?
Oh, the hauntingly bad, I love it.
Okay, I'd never have guessed.
Yeah, I know, it's surprising. I cannot watch sappy happy, cannot do it.
So when you do convey these other shades of emotion, right? Like you said, missing somebody, or losing a pet, or what are the reactions that you get? Are they different from the reactions that you get for the sort of the more regular stuff that you do?
People resonate in other ways, because if you've not lost a pet, you're not going to
know what it feels like.
Yeah, you're not going to know what it feels like, and you might not resonate as much. And with all these things, right? It's a lot of things. If I'm talking about mosquitoes, if you don't get bitten by mosquitoes as I do, you're not going to resonate with that post. Otherwise I'm like bait for mosquito at all times. So the same thing with other things. I know there's some emotions that people might resonate with, but if I don't, then how am I going to express it?
Is it important that what you put out should even resonate with someone, or they should even be able to relate to it, or does it matter?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, so let me start from the beginning. So when I started drawing, when I was in college, I always drew, but when I was drawing in college, it was the first time I shared things on the internet, and that was through blogs then, Blogger. And I put out everything, and now when I look back, it's absolute. And you put out because you're not expecting people to see it, you're just putting out because you're putting out. It's and I think, honestly, that's the way people should start. You should put out for putting out. But now I know I have an audience. So when I put out, I do think a bit about, that's why I have things where I don't, where very particular things about things that I don't do. Like I don't draw about politics. I don't draw about touchy subjects. These are not conversations I feel like I want to have via drawings on the internet, very particularly.
Yeah.
But I do think of like some things people will resonate with, and sometimes I'm surprised. But I feel like I'm such a general person. I feel like I have everyday emotions that everyone kind of resonates with. Like everyone kind of will feel what I feel. I don't feel anything particularly different. I can talk about, if I talk about my kid or having a child, that's not something I would have related to like 4 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years ago. But like, it's just not. So people who will not understand that, like even when I was drawing about being pregnant, people, like a lot of people wouldn't understand what that even meant.
And that's fine, right?
Absolutely fine, but it's not like I'm like, oh, let me hold back and not tell how funny it is to be like pregnant, you know? So I put out a bit on that, and like, you know, so I do think like people want, but it's not that I'm holding back because of it.
Yeah. You've got these really sweet little posts about your toddler. I mean, he comes into your posts every once in a while. And how does motherhood and art tie in for you? How does it all come together?
Okay, so I drew about life from the beginning. So it was like when I moved to Bangalore, there was a lot of, like when I started driving, there was a lot of drawings about traffic, about being in the car, things I noticed from the car, like so many things from the car. I do not go out as much now. I'm very hermity. So I don't get to draw about things from the car. Yeah. So it's all, then it became, then I got my dog, and then everything's about dogs. Then, you know, I started seeing my husband. Everything's about like coupley things and like lovey things. And now it's motherhood. So it's just things that are happening and that engulf my life in a way. So wherever I see stories, it's basically that. So that's why I feel like people who follow me for a while always tell me like, I've seen your journey through all these things, because that's what it is. It's just like things I notice in this regular, normal life that I lead. So everyday stuff.
Does your kid like to draw?
Absolutely does not, which is very sad. I thought, oh, we'll be drawing together. He's less inclined than many kids I've seen, which is very sad. But hopefully it changes. I don't know, but it'll be nice. My plan is to use him for parts of the drawing I don't like doing when he's older. But let's see how that goes.
So like a future assistant?
Hopefully. I have no hopes the way it's going at this point.
Okay. You know, in common perception, there is often a divide between art, like pure art, and then more applied forms of art, like illustration. So why is it that you don't think of yourself as an artist?
I wish I had the answer to this, which is why I said it's always a question I have without I've never been able to. Technically, honestly, if I was removed from myself, I'll be like, yeah, I'm an artist. Yeah. But I would call a lot of things art in that case, right? Like someone who does anything creatively, and that can be code. Code can be like art because you can make it beautiful code.
Right.
And that means he's an artist, but he's also a coder. So, you know, that's the part where I'm like, this is just one of those words which are very broad. Yeah. So technically I am an artist. It's just that I don't refer to myself as art. And when you talk about applied art and art as in for visual pleasure, again, they're both the same thing, because you can take something that's beautiful and it is being used, of course. Like I can take the Mona Lisa and use it on a chocolate cover, and that's applied art, but it's still art. So it's just a matter of using it differently. These are just words, I feel like. It's everything. And then, like I said, everything becomes art, which is why I feel like it's not a word I would use. Like, I mean, someone can do a beautiful, like, can arrange books beautifully. I'm looking at wires and I'm like, why? Like, you know, an electrician can put like wires, like set it up so beautifully that it becomes art. But then is it art? Like, how do you define that? Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there is a way, but at least I'm not familiar with it. And so that's why I don't use the word as much as, at least in my case, illustrations. Yeah.
Do people refer to you as an artist?
All the time. Yeah. In fact, that's the primary way people refer to me.
I would think, yeah.
Yeah, just not how I would. I would use designer before artist, even though I'm so far. I mean, not so far from being a designer, but like, I definitely always call myself a commercial illustrator or illustrator.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So you're like fully on the iPad now? Most of your illustrations happen like that?
No, I still many a times draw on paper.
Yeah.
Recently, like for the past year, it's been iPad primarily, which was like definitely not the year before that, which is nuts.
Yeah.
But like, again, a very big thing is time constraint. I love drawing with pen, but I just don't. If I can get even like a couple of hours extra, I'll make the switch. But of course, it's without. I mean, it's obvious, but like, of course, I won't lose the quality. I'll never do it for the sake of quality. So I won't be like, let me use the iPad because it's faster. But my outlines won't look. If it doesn't look as good, I want to use it.
Yeah.
But also, definitely putting in. Of course, again, I'm going back to technology has changed where I have like the ability to make a stroke on the iPad and it looks so much like a pencil that I don't really need to use the pencil. I get a covering on the iPad which makes it feel like paper, so I don't miss out drawing on paper. All those things also have come into play. So yeah, it's part of it. Yeah.
Do you have like an ideal time, place, and a setup where you like to work, or are you just a person who can draw on the move like you were doing here?
100% very static at my computer. That's my setup. That's why I don't tend to. I'm not one of like. This is why again, like everyone has the idea of an artist going out and drawing, and do not do that. And why I end up making notes more than drawing, because there's a specific place I like drawing. That's at my computer, at my desk, on my chair, with coffee.
I know it's a very overused term, but what does work-life balance look like for you? Because I think you're very particular about this.
Yeah. It honestly very easy before child, very hard after child, only because I have a lot to do in a day. But after after I had my child, there's no way I could cancel anything out. If I had to cancel something out, it'll have to be my work, which is where I feel like there's a sacrifice on the front of like experimenting, which is the thing I honestly miss the most. But yeah, that's the only way. So when I am with him, there's no way around, like there's no half-hearted things. And that's, I think anyone with a child will tell you, you can't be,
That's amazing,
you can't half.
You want that, you want to give that.
Yeah.
Can one become good at art, like at the level of, kind of becoming professional, good at art or illustration, just by being interested and, by working hard? Or is it just innate talent that can make somebody an illustrator?
If I teach you to draw a cat today and you're like doing it for the first time, it's not going to be good possibly. But you do it 10 times over a week, you're going to be good at drawing that damn cat. It's the same with, like, I don't know how to draw a lot of things. I still have to practice. People talk about talent, but talent is what, 20% of the thing? The rest is just work, hard work for anything. Students or anyone getting into the field need to understand. And also the swap of it not being a hobby, because when it changes from hobby into career, there's a lot that gets changed. And that's why I talk about diligence a lot, because it's not something where you're like, oh, I feel like drawing today. It's not. Whether you feel like drawing or not, you will have to do it if you have a financial responsibility for this to make it work, for this to work. And and so like understanding that you have to do it whether you like it or not. And that involves a lot of things, not only doing your drawing for a client, but that how do you take the next step? How will my next client see me? There's so much more involved. There's so many more intricacies. So it's not, again, unless you're an illustrator for, say, a newspaper where you're just drawing, you need to read the news, you need to draw. Of course, there are many more intricacies with that as well. But especially as like a contract illustrator, how will I make, my next paycheck come? How will I make sure that my next paycheck goes, elsewhere? And all those things. It's not a one-track job. It's like it's a juggling job, a bit of that.
If you had to point to one woman anywhere in the world who kind of, just the way she is excites you, and the way she is kind of maybe inspires you, or you just think she's like a complete rock star, who would that woman be?
So recently, not so recently, but I read a book about this lady, Temple Grandin, who is an animal behaviorist, but she's also like an academic. I think she's a bit of a scientist as well. And the book was called Thinking Visually, if I'm not mistaken. For a big chunk of my childhood, I wanted to be a vet. I love animals.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So much. Like, anyway, that's another story.
That's when you first connected to Temple Grandin.
I mean, everyone should read it because just to understand how people think, especially when it comes to work. So they talk about like, it's like as if I'm doing a podcast for this, but they're talking about like when people are at work and why you need people who think visually to understand how something would flow, especially if you're working with, say, construction and stuff like that. It's just a beautiful book.
Wow.
I don't know, it's amazing.
So there's autism, and then there's different patterns and ways of thinking, and there is animal welfare, and all of these kind of come together for her.
Yeah, so that's all the stuff she is involved in on the film, but she's amazing.
Fantastic.
She's an amazing person. Yeah.
So as you know, on this podcast, we will dress our guest up as that person that
it's going to
that
be
they
very
admire.
hard. We look extremely different
Yeah,
on
but I
every
think
front.
that's what makes my work more exciting.
Yeah, all the best.
I mean, we'll do our best. Okay. It's been amazing chatting with you,
So
Alicia.
lovely talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. I think that you've kind of like really opened up, some of those thoughts and questions that one might have about art, about illustration, about sort of being this super hardworking illustrator, and your process, and sort of how you hold on to your idea of work-life balance, and how that kind of feeds into a more meaningful life for you. So I think on many points, tons of takeaways. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm the only thing I have is like every time I have a talk about my work and how I work is that I feel like I get worried that people are like, oh, it's not as interesting as I imagined because it's very regular. You put in the work, do the, but I like to make that known because I don't want anyone, like, especially when you're getting into a field, there should not be a romanticizing of this.
Absolutely.
I mean, but it is. I'm ending with the best feel in the world. It is. So you cannot go to sleep. Like, you just feel great during the work, after the work. It's just one of those. I think when you do what you love,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it shows, right, in the work that you do, and so many people feel that when they see your work. So I think
that's
it's
very sweet also.
something is really working. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.